The three sisters lounged in their private crystal dome, watching the galactic news with expressions that ranged from amusement to disgust. Their home, Blue Haven, hung in space like a jewel made of pure sapphire, its elegant spires reaching toward the stars. But today, their attention wasn't on the beauty outside their window. It was fixed on the broadcast showing Earth's first appearance at the Galactic Council. "Look at how pink his skin is," Rose said, wrinkling her nose. As the eldest sister, she had perfected the art of looking down on others. Her own skin shimmered with a subtle blue tint that marked her as royalty of the Star Empire. And those round ears. How does he even hear properly? Lily, who sat in the middle of their floating couch, leaned forward with a smirk. Listen to how he talks. So simple, so plain. She gestured at the screen where King James of Earth stood addressing the council. No poetry, no proper greeting songs, not even a formal dance. Just words, words, words. Boring words, added Iris, the youngest. She played with her floating data screen, already posting comments about the human king's appearance across the galactic social networks. Did you know their spaceships are less than 500 years old? They probably still think light speed is amazing. The sisters laughed, their voices chiming like crystal bells in their private chamber. On the screen, King James continued his speech about Earth joining the galactic community. He wore what they assumed was his best clothing. A simple dark suit with minimal decorations. Nothing like the flowing, light-catching robes the sisters wore. "Watch this part," Iris said, turning up the volume. "He's about to announce their great achievement." She put on a deep voice, mocking the human king's tone. "We have colonized 4 whole planets." More laughter filled the room. Rose wiped tears from her eyes, her skin rippling with patterns of amusement. 4 planets. We colonized 4 planets during the First Empire alone. What's next? Will he brag about inventing the wheel? None of them noticed their father, Emperor White, standing in the doorway. His tall figure cast a long shadow across the crystal floor, but the sisters were too busy making fun of the human king to see it. The Emperor watched silently, his ancient eyes taking in every gesture, every mocking word. "I heard," Lily said, lowering her voice to a dramatic whisper, "that they still eat real food. Not pure energy, not even synthesized nutrients. They put actual dead things and plants in their mouths and chew them." "No," Rose gasped in fake horror. "How barbaric. No wonder their king looks so solid. He's probably full of this dead food right now." The Emperor cleared his throat. The sound, though soft, made all 3 sisters jump. Their skin patterns shifted quickly from amusement to surprise to embarrassment. "Father," they said in unison, standing quickly and bowing their heads. "I see my daughters are very interested in our newest galactic neighbors," he said. His voice was calm, but there was something in it that made the sisters nervous. "Perhaps you would like to share your observations with the rest of the court." "We were just," Rose began. "Having fun," Lily added quickly. "Discussing cultural differences," Iris finished, trying to sound diplomatic. The Emperor walked to their viewing screen, his robes flowing like liquid starlight. On the screen, King James was finishing his speech. The humans' eyes seemed to look right at them through the broadcast, steady and clear. "Cultural differences," the Emperor repeated softly. "Yes, there are many. And much we could learn from each other." He turned to his daughters, his expression unreadable. "Continue your discussion. I'm sure it will be most enlightening." He left them standing there, uncertain and slightly afraid. But as soon as he was gone, Iris giggled. "Do you think he's upset?" she asked. "Why would he be?" Rose said, settling back onto the couch. "We're just stating facts. Humans are primitive. Everyone knows that. And their king is the most primitive of all," Lily added, but her voice wasn't quite as confident as before. Outside their crystal dome, the stars continued their eternal dance. Somewhere out there, Earth's simple king finished his speech and stepped down from the council platform. And in his private chamber, Emperor White began to form a plan that would change his daughters' lives forever. 3 months passed, and the sisters' amusement turned to confusion, then worry. Earth, the supposedly primitive planet, was gaining influence in the Galactic Council at an alarming rate. Every day brought news of another diplomatic success for the human king. "This can't be right," Rose muttered, pacing across their crystal chamber. The news played on multiple screens around them, each showing King James in different meetings with powerful alien races. He just solved a trade dispute between the metal mines and the light beings. Those two haven't agreed on anything in 3 centuries. Lily lay sprawled on their floating couch, her skin patterns showing distress. Maybe they feel sorry for him. You know, like when you let a baby win a game. But her voice lacked conviction. On the screen, the leaders of both ancient races were bowing to King James with genuine respect. "Well, our posts about him are still getting lots of attention," Eris said, trying to sound cheerful. She waved her hand through her floating data screen, showing the latest numbers. "Look, my joke about his plain crown got 10 million shares." The sisters had continued their mockery of the human king, turning it into a daily show for their followers. They made fun of his simple clothes, his direct way of speaking, and his habit of walking instead of floating. But lately, their jokes felt hollow. "Did you see what he did with the Time Weavers?" Lily asked suddenly. They offered him one of their infinity gems as a welcome gift. He asked them to give it to the desert clans instead, to help with their water crisis. She shook her head. The desert clans have been refusing help from everyone for millennia, but they accepted it from him. Rose was about to respond when their screens lit up with breaking news. The sisters fell silent as they watched King James step onto the council platform again. This time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood representatives from 20 different races, including some that had never allied with anyone before. "My friends," King James said in his straightforward way, "today we announce the formation of the Unity Trade Alliance. All members will share technology, resources, and knowledge freely with each other. Our goal is not to gain power, but to help every race reach their full potential." The sisters watched in shock as the alien representatives raised their hands, tentacles and light forms in agreement. The council chamber erupted in applause. "This is bad," Rose whispered. "Really bad." "Why?" Iris asked, though she already knew the answer. "Because," Lily explained, her skin turning pale with worry, "the Star Empire isn't part of this alliance. Look at the trade routes they're drawing up." She pointed to a glowing map. "They go around all our territories. We're being left out." Their father's voice made them jump again. "Indeed we are," Emperor White said, stepping into the chamber. This time, his expression wasn't unreadable. It was angry. "And do you know why?" The sisters couldn't meet his eyes. Their skin patterns showed shame, but also confusion. "Because," the Emperor continued, "certain members of our royal family have made it impossible for us to join. Their constant mockery of King James has spread across the galaxy. How can we ask to join an alliance when our princesses treat its founder like a joke?" "But father," Rose protested, "he's just a human. His civilization is so young." "Young." The Emperor's laugh was bitter. "While you were making fun of his simple words, he was building bridges between ancient enemies. While you mocked his plain clothes, he was giving away priceless gifts to help others. And while you joked about his habit of walking, he was traveling further diplomatically than any leader in galactic history." The sisters fell silent, their earlier confidence completely gone. On the screens around them, King James continued discussing his plans for unity and cooperation. His voice was still simple and direct, but now they heard the wisdom in it. "Your posts have made us look foolish and petty," Emperor White said. "And now we face a choice: remain isolated or find a way to prove we can change." He turned to leave, then stopped. "I suggest you think carefully about your next actions. The future of our empire may depend on them." As their father left, the sisters looked at each other with growing dread. For the first time, they wondered if perhaps they were the primitive ones after all. The grand hall of Blue Haven's royal palace buzzed with whispers. Hundreds of noble aliens floated in their finest robes, their skin patterns shifting with curiosity and excitement. Emperor White had called an emergency meeting of the entire court, and no one knew why. In their private waiting chamber, the three sisters huddled together nervously. A week had passed since their father's warning, and they had stopped posting jokes about King James, but the damage was already done. Their old posts kept spreading across the galaxy, gaining new comments every day. Maybe Father found a way to join the Unity Trade Alliance, Lily said hopefully. She adjusted her ceremonial robe for the 10th time, her hands shaking slightly. Rose shook her head. I checked the official channels. Half the Alliance members don't want us. They keep sharing our posts as proof that we're too. She paused, the word tasting bitter in her mouth. Primitive in our thinking. I tried to delete them, Iris added miserably. But once something spreads through the galactic network, it stays forever. A soft chime filled the air, calling them to the grand hall. The sisters floated out together, trying to look confident despite their worry. As they took their places beside their father's throne, they noticed something strange. The usual court musicians were missing, replaced by official record keepers. This wasn't going to be a celebration. Emperor White appeared in a flash of light, his expression solemn. The court bowed as one, creating a wave of flowing robes and shimmering skin patterns. But instead of sitting on his throne, the emperor remained standing. My people, he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall. Our empire stands at a crossroads. For 10,000 years, we have prided ourselves on our advanced culture, our refined ways, our superiority. He paused, looking directly at his daughters. But pride can blind us to truth. The whispers grew louder. The sisters felt hundreds of eyes turned toward them. The galaxy is changing. New alliances form while we stand alone, wrapped in our ancient pride. We mock what we don't understand, and in doing so, we reveal our own ignorance. The emperor waved his hand, and massive screens appeared around the hall. They showed the sisters' posts about King James, followed by clips of his diplomatic achievements. Rose, Lily, and Iris wanted to sink through the crystal floor. Their jokes seemed so childish now, playing next to images of King James uniting ancient enemies and solving century-old conflicts. But there is hope, the emperor continued. Our ancestors left us many laws, including one that may save us from isolation. The law of unity through bonds. He gestured to the record keepers, who unfurled floating scrolls of light. This law states that royal marriages can bridge any gap, unite any peoples, transcend any difference, even between species. The sisters' skin patterns froze in shock. Surely he couldn't mean. Therefore, by my right as emperor, I invoke this law today. His voice grew stronger, more formal. To prove our commitment to change, to show we can move beyond our prejudice, I decree that my 3 daughters shall marry King James of Earth. The hall erupted in chaos. Nobles gasped and chattered, their skin patterns flashing in surprise. The sisters stood paralyzed, their minds refusing to accept what they'd just heard. Father, you can't. Rose finally managed to speak. This is impossible. Lily added. We'll be laughingstocks. Iris cried. The emperor turned to them, his voice quieter but firm. No, my daughters. You made yourselves laughingstocks when you mocked a great leader out of ignorance. This is your chance to show true growth. He addressed the court again. The decision is made. The invitations have been sent. King James has already accepted. The sisters felt their world spinning. They had spent months making fun of the human king, and now they would have to marry him. It had to be a nightmare. But as they looked at the screens still showing King James's achievements, as they saw the respect in the eyes of the galaxy's oldest races, a terrible thought struck them. Perhaps the nightmare wasn't having to marry him. Perhaps the nightmare was realizing how wrong they had been about him all along. Back in their crystal dome, The three sisters tried everything they could think of to escape their fate. Rose searched through ancient law books. Lily sent desperate messages to their political allies. Iris dug through the galactic network for any loophole they could use. "This can't be legal," Rose muttered, pushing away another floating screen of laws. "Forcing three people to marry the same person. Even primitive Earth doesn't do that anymore." "Don't call them primitive," Lily warned, rubbing her tired eyes. "That kind of thinking is what got us into this mess." She gestured at her message screen, which showed nothing but polite rejections from their supposed friends. "Nobody will help us. They're all too busy trying to join King James's alliance." Iris let out a frustrated sound and fell back onto their couch. "It gets worse. People are loving this story. They're calling it perfect justice, the mockers becoming the mocked." She waved her hand, and the air filled with floating comments from across the galaxy. "The proud princesses will learn humility. Finally, the Star Empire joins the modern age. King James is too good for them. This is better than any drama show." The sisters' skin patterns shifted between shame and anger as they read the responses. Their own followers, who had once laughed at their jokes about King James, were now laughing at them instead. "Maybe we could run away," Rose suggested half-heartedly. "Find a nice, uninhabited planet, and destroy our family's honor forever." Lily shook her head. "Father would never forgive us. The Empire would never recover." A soft knock interrupted them. Their father's most trusted advisor, Old Star, floated into the room. His ancient face was kind as he looked at the distressed sisters, still trying to find a way out. He asked gently. Without waiting for an answer, he waved his hand. A new screen appeared, showing images that made the sisters pause their complaints. They saw King James in private moments, helping a child from a lesser race learn to read, spending hours listening to an elder's stories, working late into the night to understand different cultures' needs. In one clip, he sat on the ground with desert dwellers, eating their food and learning their ways. "Do you know what he said when your father proposed this marriage?" Old Star asked. The sisters shook their heads. "He said, 'I accept,' not as punishment for their words, but as a chance to show them that differences can become strengths." Old Star's eyes twinkled. "He also asked for details about your favorite foods, interests, and dreams. He wants to make sure you're comfortable when you visit Earth." The sisters looked at each other in surprise. They had expected anger, revenge, or at least smug satisfaction from the man they had mocked so publicly. "That's actually quite thoughtful," Lily admitted reluctantly. "But how can he marry all three of us?" Iris asked. "Won't that be strange for humans?" Old Star smiled. "King James has spent years learning and respecting alien customs. He said if this marriage can bring peace and understanding between worlds, he will honor our ways as we must learn to honor others." Rose watched another clip of King James calming a frightened alien child during a diplomatic meeting. His gentle patience made her skin patterns shift with unexpected warmth. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "we should stop trying to escape this marriage and start learning about the person we're going to marry." Lily nodded, already pulling up proper diplomatic records instead of gossip feeds. "We should at least know more about him than those stupid jokes we made. And maybe," Iris added, her voice small, "we should prepare a real apology. Not because we have to, but because we were wrong." Their private crystal dome, which had echoed with complaints all day, grew quiet as the sisters began their research. For the first time, they looked at King James not as a target for mockery, but as their future husband. And for the first time, they felt something besides horror at the thought. Old Star left them to their studies, a satisfied smile on his ancient face. Sometimes, he thought, the best lessons came wrapped in what seemed like punishments. The royal ship dropped out of light speed, and Earth appeared before them. The three sisters gasped. They had expected a simple blue-green world, but the sight took their breath away. Orbital gardens bloomed in space, their crystal structures catching starlight. Clean energy stations floated like silver clouds, while ships of all races moved smoothly through well-organized lanes. "It's beautiful," Eris whispered, pressing her hands against the viewing window. "Why didn't any of our research show this?" "Because we weren't looking for beauty before," Rose answered softly. "We were only looking for things to mock." Their ship glided toward a docking station that seemed to be made of living metal and growing plants combined. As they got closer, they saw that the whole structure changed its shape slightly to better welcome their vessel's design. Lily checked their appearance one last time. They had decided to wear their formal robes, but in simpler styles than usual. No floating gems, no light-bending fabric, just elegant simplicity. They had practiced walking instead of floating, though the effort made their legs shake. "Remember," Rose said as they prepared to leave their ship, "we apologize first, before anything else." Her sisters nodded, their skin patterns showing nervousness and determination. They had practiced their apology for days, wanting to get it exactly right. The landing bay doors opened, and the sisters got their first surprise. Instead of a formal welcoming committee, only King James stood there, wearing what they now knew was his casual clothing. He smiled warmly and walked forward to meet them. "Welcome to Earth," he said, bowing in the style of their culture. "I hope your journey was comfortable." The sisters stared. Up close, his simple appearance held a quiet dignity they had never noticed in their mockery. His eyes were kind but clever, missing nothing. "Your Majesty," Rose began, her voice shaking slightly. "Before anything else, we need to see your rooms and rest from your long journey," King James interrupted gently. "Formal apologies can wait until you're comfortable. I believe you've had enough discomfort over this situation already." The sisters exchanged surprised looks as he led them through the station. Every few steps brought new wonders. Plants from 1,000 worlds grew together in harmony. Energy beings floated peacefully next to silicon creatures. Species that the sisters had thought could never mix were working and talking together. "Our palace is just below," King James explained, pointing to Earth's surface. "I thought you might like to walk through the garden path to reach it. Unless you're too tired." "We'd love to walk," Lily said quickly, remembering their research about the importance of gardens in human culture. The garden path turned out to be more amazing than any royal chamber on Blue Haven. Trees from across the galaxy grew side by side, their branches creating natural archways. Small creatures that the sisters had only seen in books scampered freely about. The air was filled with sweet smells and soft sounds. "How do you make all these different species grow together?" Eris asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her shyness. King James smiled. "We don't make them. We just help them find ways to support each other. Like this." He pointed to a blue flower they recognized from their homeworld, growing stronger because it was wrapped around an earth oak tree. Different doesn't have to mean separate. The sisters fell quiet, understanding his gentle message. As they walked, they noticed more examples of things working together. Earth tech combined with alien science, traditional architecture blended with modern designs, old and new existing in perfect balance. "Your past messages about me were quite creative," King James said suddenly, making the sisters freeze in shame. But when they looked at him, he was smiling. "I especially like the one about my simple crown. You were right, it is plain. Because I believe a true king's glory should be in his people's happiness, not in what he wears." Rose felt her skin patterns shift with admiration instead of mockery for the first time. Lily found herself wanting to learn more about his diplomatic ways, and Iris couldn't stop looking at all the amazing technology she had once dismissed as primitive. As they reached the palace, a beautiful blend of nature and science, the sisters realized something important. Their father's punishment wasn't going to be a punishment at all. It was going to be an adventure. 1 month into their stay on Earth, the three sisters found themselves busier than they had ever been on Blue Haven. Each had discovered something that changed their view of humans forever. Rose spent her mornings in what humans called the Grand Archive. Here, Art from every known civilization filled endless halls that shifted and changed to display different pieces each day. She sat for hours watching Earth children learn about alien art, while alien children studied Earth's masterpieces. "You once said humans had no poetry," the archive keeper said to her one day. "But look there." She pointed to King James, who sat on the floor with children from 20 different worlds. He was teaching them to make art together, each adding their own world style to create something entirely new. Rose watched as her future husband patiently helped a small crystal child hold a paintbrush, then praised a floating light being's color choices. Her skin patterns glowed with shame as she remembered mocking his simple words. Those simple words were now teaching the galaxy's children to create beauty together. Meanwhile, Lily discovered her own surprise in the diplomatic wing. She had expected primitive meeting rooms. Instead, she found chambers that could change their entire environment to make each visitor feel at home. But it was the Earth concept of open-door hours that truly shocked her. "Anyone can request to see him?" she asked the human assistant in disbelief. "Even common people?" "King James believes every voice matters," the assistant replied. "Actually, he's free now if you'd like to see how it works." Lily watched in amazement as King James spent hours listening to everyone from grand ambassadors to simple workers. He treated them all the same, gave them all his full attention. She remembered joking about his boring speaking style. Now she understood. He spoke simply so everyone could understand, chose direct words so no one would feel confused or left out. Iris made her discovery in the science labs, where she had gone to secretly prove that human technology couldn't be as advanced as it seemed. Instead, she found herself learning something new every hour. "But this is impossible," she said, looking at a tiny device that could transform waste into fresh water and nutrients. "Our scientists said combining organic and mechanical systems this way couldn't work." "That's because they tried to make one system control the other," explained the human scientist. "We learned to let them work together as equals." She smiled. "King James actually gave us that idea. He said, 'Don't try to prove one way is better. Find out how different ways can make each other stronger.'" Iris thought about how she had laughed at Earth's young technology. Now she saw that humans hadn't spent thousands of years trying to perfect one way of doing things. They had spent their time learning how to mix different ways together. In the evenings, the sisters met in their shared garden to talk about what they had learned. The garden itself was another surprise from King James. He had filled it with flowers from Blue Haven mixed with earth plants, creating new and beautiful combinations. "Did you see him today with the Trade Council?" Lily asked one evening. "He solved that mining dispute by suggesting both sides work together instead of dividing the territory." "He visited the science lab," Iris added excitedly. "He actually understood my explanation about quantum field theory, and he asked really good questions. He spent 2 hours helping me understand Earth music," Rose said softly. "I used to think it was too simple, but it's not simple. It's pure. Like him." They fell silent, each thinking about how wrong their first impressions had been. Their father's punishment had become a gift. Every day showed them something new about the man they had mocked, something that made their old jokes seem more foolish. "We should do something," Rose said suddenly. "Something to show everyone we've changed, that we understand now." Her sisters nodded eagerly. They had been feeling the same way. "But what?" Iris asked. "What could make up for all those mean messages we sent?" Lily smiled slowly. "I have an idea. But we'll need help from every artist, scientist, and diplomat on Earth." The sisters huddled together, planning long into the night. Their skin patterns glowed with excitement as their idea took shape. They would show the galaxy that they had learned the most important lesson of all, that true greatness lies not in mocking others, but in bringing people together. The day before the wedding, the 3 sisters called everyone to Earth's largest gathering space. Representatives from every known race filled the huge crystal dome. Their father, Emperor White, sat in the front row, his expression curious. King James stood to one side, watching calmly as always. Many of you know us as the princesses who mocked Earth and its king. Rose began, her voice clear and strong. You laughed with us then. Now we ask you to learn with us. The sisters raised their hands together. The dome's walls came alive with images. Their old messages making fun of King James appeared first. But then each message transformed, showing the truth they had discovered. We mocked his simple crown, lightly said, pointing to their old jokes. The image changed to show King James giving away precious gifts to help struggling worlds. But we learned that true wealth isn't what you keep, it's what you share to help others grow. We laughed at how he walks instead of floating. Iris continued. The walls showed King James walking through crowds, stopping to talk with people from all worlds and backgrounds. But we learned that walking lets you stop and listen, lets you meet people where they are instead of floating above them. Rose stepped forward. We made fun of his direct words. The images showed King James solving conflicts, teaching children, bringing enemies together, all with those same simple, clear words. But we learned that true wisdom doesn't need fancy language. Sometimes the simplest words carry the deepest meaning. The sisters moved to the center of the dome. Above them, the images began to mix and blend together, showing how Earth had learned to combine different cultures, technologies, and ideas. We thought being young meant being primitive, they said together. But Earth showed us that being young can mean being open to new ideas. Being young can mean having the courage to try new ways. Being young can mean seeing connections that others miss. Their skin patterns shifted to show deep respect as they turned to King James. We came here thinking we were being punished. Instead, we found a teacher, the leader, a man who turned mockery into understanding. King James smiled and walked to join them. The sisters took his hands, their skin patterns now glowing with genuine affection. Tomorrow, we will marry, Lily announced to the crowd. Not because we have to, but because we want to. Because we believe in the future Earth is building. A future where differences make us stronger together. The dome erupted in applause. Even Emperor White was showing bright, happy patterns on his skin. But the sisters weren't finished yet. And to show our commitment to this future, Iris said excitedly, we have one more surprise. The dome's walls changed again. Now they showed plans for a new kind of school, one that would be built together by Earth and the Star Empire. A place where anyone can come to learn how to bring cultures together, Rose explained. Where art, science, diplomacy, and wisdom from all worlds can mix and grow. A living example of what we learned here on Earth. King James looked at the plans in surprise. The sisters watched him nervously. They had worked hard to keep this secret from him. This is wonderful, he said softly. But you've labeled it the Mockingbird School. Why name it after a bird? The sisters smiled. On Earth, mockingbirds learn and copy other bird songs, making new music from different pieces, Lily explained. Like us, they start by copying others. But like us, they can learn to make something beautiful from many different voices. King James laughed, a warm, happy sound that made the sisters' hearts lift. Perfect, he said. Absolutely perfect. As the crowd cheered and the party began, the three sisters looked at each other with joy. Their father's punishment had become the greatest gift of their lives. They had learned to see beauty in simplicity, strength in differences, and wisdom in new ways. And tomorrow, they would marry the king they had once mocked, not because anyone was making them, but because they had discovered what truly made someone great. Not fancy words or floating skills or ancient traditions, but the ability to bring people together and help them shine.